Hello and welcome back to this new series on Python for DH, which is a revision of my old series, the first one on this channel. In the last video, we looked at kind of how to store data, some of the ways in which we create data in Python, such as integers, floats, strings, lists, tuples, and dictionaries. And we talked about how to print off some of these basic kind of objects, because Python is an object-oriented programming language. In this video, we start tackling these individually, and we're going to be introduced to another type of data in this video called a Boolean. It is spelt like this, Boolean, and this very weird looking word to us humanists is really just a fancy way of saying true or false. These are Booleans. We're going to get to that in this video and talk about them in more depth. But what I want to do right now is talk about basically how we format a string in Python. If you remember in the last video, I spoke about how we formed a string by using either a double quotation mark or a single quotation mark, as we can see over here. So we can make a string with two quotation marks, or we can make them with single quotation marks. And what's important here, it doesn't matter which one you use so long as you are consistent. There will be very particular circumstances when you're going to want to use one over the other, but we're not going to get to that for a while. And the way in which we make a string is we have to say a string or something like that. You can name this whatever you want. And when you have to set it equal to something in quotation marks. So this creates an object that is a string. This equal sign after this word tells Python that an object is being made, and that object is going to be, it's equal to some kind of string. So you can just type in whatever you want, just complete random gibberish. For the purposes of this video, we're going to be working with 4 different strings, and I'm going to copy and paste them into the YouTube description down below so that you can access these very easily. So our first one's going to be this long string right here. The next one's going to be A1 and A2 again, which we saw in the previous video. The third one is going to be this right here, my text2. You're going to see why we have these squiggly brackets when we get there. And then the fourth set is going to be this user1 and user2, Tom and Shelly. Again, all this is going to make sense as we get to it throughout the video. So go ahead and copy and paste these into your Python script now. Pause the video if you need to, and then come on back. Okay, so let's go ahead and start talking about how we interact with strings in Python. Doing something by just putting it in a Python script doesn't really do anything. It doesn't help us out. We need to interact with that data to make it useful. So the way in which we do that in Python is we use methods and functions on our strings to manipulate them to do things that we want to have them do. So we're going to talk about a few of these in this video, and I'm starting a new series on strings and all the different format and methods that you can do on them in a long playlist on YouTube. I'll put a link in the description down below so you can kind of check it out. But what we're going to cover in this video is how to find something in a string, figure out where it's at in that string, so we can figure out where the word hello is, for example. We're also going to talk about probably one of the more common ones that you're going to use as you format texts, and that's the replace function. It's probably the one I use almost all the time, almost every day. The next one we're going to talk about is split. This is going to be very useful when you need to split up a text into individual sentences. We're also going to show you how to join two smaller strings together, but you can do this with strings of any size. And we're going to also talk about how to make a string uppercase, a string lowercase, how to format a string, and this is going to allow us to insert particular information into a text. And then we're going to talk about, finally, how to count the occurrence of something in a string, and we're going to also see if a string contains a particular name or something else, if it contains another string. We're going to learn all of that in this video, step by step. So the first thing I want to talk about is how do we find something in a string? Well, it's actually quite simple. The way we're going to do this is we're just going to say print. So that's going to print off something, right? Our open and our close parentheses. So we're going to tell Python what we want printed off. And what we want printed off is, in this case, my text, which is going to tell it to look at my text. And we're going to say dot find. And what this is going to do is it's going to call a method so that we can actually tell Python what we want to find. And let's say I want to find the word hello. In order to do that, I need to tell Python that I am looking for a string. So I'm using a open and a close quotation marks. And I'm going to tell it I wanted to find hello. Take a moment and think about what might actually be returned here. What I'm going to tell you right now is that it's going to tell me the position of hello in this whole thing. So what do you think it's going to tell me when I look for the word hello? It's going to tell me 0. Now, if you said 1, you wouldn't be wrong. It's going to be in the first position, but what we're looking for here is the first position in Pythonic or computer programming terms, which is always going to be 0. What if I was looking for the word and? What do you think this would tell me? It's told me 6. Now, I know you're thinking to yourself, why on earth does it say 6? Even if we go back one and say that it's in the 5th position, it's not doing that. It's not actually in the 5th position. Well, what's actually happening here is Python is counting all of these characters. So if we're looking for the word, or just the letter E, for example, we're going to get 1, L, and you'll see 2. And if I type in L again, you'll see that it just returns the first occurrence of that. Now, you can do more complex with find and find things that are in a later occurrence, but for right now, let's just focus on the basics. So this is how we keep on going through, and we type in O, and we get 4, because it still counts that other L. And then we go with a space. We get 5, and then finally we do the A, and we get 6. So that is why when we type in the word and, it is telling us that it is in the 6th position, because it is finding the first occurrence of that A and giving us that output. So that's how the find method works. What about the replace method? So I'm going to comment this out so you can go back and look at it later in the video if you get lost without having to scroll all the way back. So let's do the same thing. Let's print off my text.replace. Now, replace is going to take 2 variables right here, 2 arguments. And in replace, you want to have the first argument to be the item that you want to see replaced. So let's say for whatever reason, I really don't like the word hello. I want people to be saying goodbye in this text. So I'm going to say that I want the first argument to be hello. This is what I want to see replaced. And then I'm going to do a comma. And I'm going to say what I want that word to be replaced with. I want to see it replaced with the word bye for whatever reason. What do you think will happen when I print this off? Take a moment and guess. If we print this off, we see that hello has been replaced with the word bye. Now, I know what you're thinking, what's going to be the use of that? It's actually very useful when you're trying to clean up texts. If for whatever reason I need to remove every single period in a text, I can do something like this. I can say print that off and replace the period and get rid of it. I'm going to print that off. And now that period is gone. And what's really cool about this is that I can do other things too. I can do replace, I can stack these, and I can say comma. And now this entire text will have no punctuation. This is going to be very important for higher end programming functions, such as natural language processing. When you're trying to analyze a text, you oftentimes need to remove all the punctuations. This is the replace function. It is very useful. Get used to it. I highly recommend it. But here's something that's interesting. What if I tried to print this off down here? So I'm going to print it off twice. What do you think is going to happen? If If I print it off again, we'll see that one item, the one I printed off here, has all the punctuation removed. The one down here does not. This is because the string has not changed in memory. In order for me to have this new text stored in memory, we need to create a new object. And we can do that by simply saying cleaned, or whatever name you want, and making it equal to. So now when I print off my text, I print off cleaned, you'll see these reversed when we print them off. So we've got a new object that is actually our cleaned text, and it's got all the punctuation removed. So that's going to be how you store a new object with a desired result. So in this case, I wanted to see all of those things replaced. Now, here's one thing I want to also talk about. I'm going to do another line right here, and I'm going to print off my text dot replace, and I want to replace all instances of the word to, and I want to replace it with nothing. What do you think is going to happen down here at the very, very end? We scroll all the way over. We see that all of the examples of to have been removed. This is because replace doesn't just replace the first iteration of something, it replaces all of them. Now we have ways to control the first iteration of something or the first occurrence of something in Python, but again, for right now, we are doing the basics. So again, like before, I'm going to comment all this out so that you can easily go back and read it in the video. So the next thing I want to demonstrate is the split function. After replace, this is probably the most important function for handling strings, or methods for handling strings. So I'm going to create a new object, and this is going to just be called a list. And I'm using a underscore list because in Python, there are certain words that you cannot use as object names, and list is one of them because it's actually a method name. So it would be problematic if you used it. So I'm going to say a underscore list is going to be equal to my text dot split. And split is going to take one argument, and you're going to tell it what you want to have split up in this text. Where do you want the split to occur? And I want to separate this text into individual sentences. So I'm going to tell it the split at the period point. So when I print off a list, kind of gave it away with the object name, think about what might actually you might actually see when I print this off, and what you might actually see in the output. If you said a list, you'd have been right. What it's done is it's split everything up into a whole bunch of different sentences, right? Well, not quite. It split everything up by the occurrence of a period. So this is where this split function can be somewhat problematic. Notice what happens down here. We have a list, hello and welcome to this video. And notice that it's removed that period. It's just used the period as a space delineator. But if we keep on going over, we'll see that the next item in our list is space, I will be your host, comma, W, because there's a period right there. And then there's another item in the list that's just J, and another item that's just B, another item that's just Mattingly. This is problematic. If I were to want to see a series of sentences in our text, this would not have achieved it. And the reason is because a period in English is used to represent an abbreviation. So William James Boniface, right? Well, let's talk about something else. How can I solve this problem? And in programming, you're dealing with a lot of problems that you have to solve. So if I'm looking at this, I see that there's always a period followed by a space. So, and we don't see that with abbreviations, right? We do them kind of consecutively. So if I split it up by a period and a space, and I rerun it, you'll see that now I've got every sentence rendered the way I want to see it. Hello and welcome to this video. I will be your host, comma, WJB Mattingly. And we see that the one instance where it has failed us is in the space, the period in the space between the B and the M. Now, you can go back and manually kind of correct this. There are more sophisticated ways to actually account for this in your Python scripts, but that's a basic introduction to the Python split method. So now I want to move down and talk about our next kind of set of problems, and that's going to be, how do you join two texts together? Well, we're going to make a new object. We're going to call it A3. We're going to make it equal to A1 plus A2. And I'm going to print off A3. And now we've got two texts smushed together. A1 and A2 have just been outputted as one long string. Now you might be thinking to yourself, that's not good. What if I had two names? Let's just say Bill and Shelly. And I printed them off. Now they're smushed together. How do I fix that problem? Well, in Python, we have a few different ways. I'm going to show you the bad way to do it first, and then I'm going to show you the newer, better way to do it. So the newer and better way we can do it is, let's make A4 a new object. Or sorry, the older way to do it is, you could say A1 plus, and you're going to put a space in manually, plus A2. And now if I print off, let's print off A4, you'll see that it's separated Bill and Shelly out. This is really long and cumbersome. Here is the proper way to do it in the new version of Python. So what you're going to do is you're going to use what are known as F strings, or formatting strings. So we type in just the letter F, and then we do an open and a close parentheses. And then what we do is we use squiggly brackets. And if you notice, this is turned red. That's because of my syntax coloring. And it's turned red because it's doing something differently in the string to separate it from the green text. And what it's telling Python, this F is saying that anytime you encounter a squiggly bracket, handle it differently because this is an object. Essentially, that's what it's doing. So we're going to tell it A1, and we're just going to type in a space, and we're going to say A2. And now we're going to print off A5, and you're going to see that we have the exact same result as the one up here. Yet what we've done is we've made what's known as a cleaner looking, shorter way of introducing the code. I promise you, when you have to format strings and there's many, many things that you're trying to bring together, this is going to be the nicer, cleaner, and easier way to do it. I highly recommend that you get used to using the F strings kind of command, or format, however you want to call it, to format strings. And that's how you join strings together. Now, this is not going to be how you join a list together. We're going to see how you do that in lecture number 6. So again, I'm going to just kind of comment all of this out, and we're going to move down, and we're going to look at, let's go back up here real fast and use my text one more time. And we're going to demonstrate kind of the upper and lower commands on this. These are very simple. So all you have to do is you just simply say print off my text.upper. And what this is going to do is it's going to uppercase everything in the entire text. And you can do the same thing by simply saying lower. And it's going to lowercase everything in the entire text. You're not going to use these too often. You will use lower if you do natural language processing or anything with neural networks, because you need to clean up your data. And one of the ways in which you do that is by standardizing everything and making it all lowercase. That's far beyond this video, but that's kind of a look into why these are actually useful to know. Let's comment that out. So now we're going to go down, and we are going to do this next thing here. We're going to work with my text2, user 1 and user 2, Tom and Shelly. And so what I'm going to show you is another demonstration for formatting. So what we can do here is we can look at it, and we see that I've already got the squiggly brackets in here, but Python's not recognizing them as squiggly brackets. That's because I don't have an F there. If I did, it would look like that. But we're going to format something a little differently here. We're going to use the format method. So we're going to say my text2.format, and what we want to format is we want to format the word user, and that's what's in these squiggly brackets here. And we want to make that equal to, this is called a keyword argument, user1. And I'm going to print this off. I should have written this before. Sorry about that. And when I do, you'll see that it says, hello, Tom. Now, if I print off my text 2, you can see the difference side by side. What this format has done is it's gone in and it's looked for these squiggly brackets, and it's looked for the specific word in the squiggly brackets, and then registered and put in user1. If I did user2, you'll see Shelly. When is this going to be useful? Well, it's going to be very useful when you're going through loops in Python and you need to, for whatever reason, input very specific data that is going to vary based on a long list of other data like names, dates, things like that. Again, we're going to see that later on, not in this video. That's just to introduce you to it right now. So what I want to do is comment this out once again, and I want to talk about two final things. And this is going to be count and contains. These are both going to be very useful. So let's say I want to print off and figure out how many times the word to occurs. So I'm going to say my text to.count, and I'm going to say the word to. What this is going to do is it's going to tell me how many times the word to appears. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And that's the answer. I know what you're thinking, but isn't there a 2 right here? Well, you're right, there is. To us humans, that's very clearly a 2. It must be. It must be included somehow. The answer is no. This is an important lesson to learn right now. Python is case sensitive. So if I were to print off 2 with a capital letter, I'm going to get 2 examples. So we've got one right here and one right here. So it's counted off TO and TO. Now, what if, for whatever reason, you wanted to know all examples of to being used? Well, think for a minute. I've already given you the tools to actually solve this problem. Pause the video and think about how you would get Python to count all instances of to without cheating and doing something like this and just printing off this and then adding them up manually. For whatever reason, your text is infinitely longer and you need to know all instances without having to add things up like that. So take a moment, pause the video, think about how you would solve this problem. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and give the solution now. So the way in which you solve this problem is actually far more easily than you might think. So what you're going to do is you're going to create a new string object. Again, you can name this whatever you want. And I'm going to say my text to dot lower. So what this is going to do is it's going to make this new string, basically all of this, just lowercase. Let's comment this out. Now, if I print off that, I get 0. Why has that occurred? Well, new string is because this entire new string is now lowercase. So now, when I do 2 like that, I get 8 because it's counting TO, 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 and etc. all the way down. So that's how you solve this problem. This is one of the examples of when lowering a text is going to be very useful. So how do we tell if a text contains an item in there? Well, we use, funnily enough, something that looks remarkably like English. I'm going to comment this out. So what I want to say is print new string in my, sorry about that, to in new string. And what this is going to return is true. So what if I wanted to see if capital was a new string? I would return false. These are known as booleans, and they're going to be very, very important and very, very useful. These are simply just true or false. These are called booleans, and it's an important term to get used to now. It's another type of data that we have in programming languages and, of course, in Python. So that's how we tell if an item is contained. And once we know if it's in there or not, we can do a lot of really cool stuff with it, but that's beyond the scope of this video. This was just intended to introduce you to some of the key methods and functions that you need to know to work with strings going forward. I highly recommend that you rewatch this video multiple times until you've got all of these down by heart. Uh, the other thing I'd recommend is going to pythonhumanities.com and checking out lesson 3 strings. You can go through and you'll be able to watch this video once I update it to this new version, and then you can play around with kind of some exercises on the actual screen. You can split things up and then go over and test out your skills in the coding exercise and go through and follow the instructions and see if you can kind of get them all down, and then test yourself also. I think there's a code or there's a quiz for lesson 3 that you can kind of go through and test your basic knowledge of all the key concepts. So that's going to be it for this video, though. Thank you for listening, and have a great day.
Thank you for watching this video. If you've enjoyed it, please like and subscribe down below and visit us at pythonhumanities.com.